means of social control of Spaniards in Manila, 1886 to 1890. Sa grupo po nila Janina Baluyot, Justin Batong, Lexa Navier, and Shamir Taoy. Start na po, group 4.
Magandang tanghali po. Naririnig po ba yung audio?
Yes po, rinig po.
Ayan. Good afternoon po to everyone. So we are here to present po our research titled, Crime and Colonialism, Personnel y Presidio Correccional as a Means of Social Control of Spaniards in Manila, 1886 to 1890. So as you can see, the researchers have added the terms crime and colonialism as per Attorney Pelleja's recommendation, as it also reflects our statement of the problem and the conceptual framework wherein the study had considered the implications of the nature of colonialism for the Spaniards' intent to pacify the inhabitants in the archipelago and to remain in control, as well as the crimes rooted through the social milieu of the early 19th century. For additional recommendations from the proposal defense includes, as per Attorney Pelleja's suggestions and recommendations, include the preparation of a table showing the crimes and case status of some. So the researchers have included table for representation of the organized and utilized crime data. However, because of the time constraint and the limited sources and the difficulty for paleographic skills and paleographists available in the Philippines, the researchers have difficulty in translating the primary source found in the Newberry Library, because the researchers were asked to pay 43,000 pesos for one primary document from Newberry Library. So we just stick to the available data crimes that can be provided from the study of Bancroft and Dr. Lagman. So that's why we have the specific time frame of 1886 to 1890. So Attorney Pelleja also asked our group to include convictee, accused, or crimes committed that may result for detainment. So it will be discussed further in different chapter and SOP of our discussion. And we have also considered the changing our title from the term instrument to as a means of, because the term instrument may have heavier implications. So we just use the word as a means of to imply how the Carcel y Presidio Correccional was used as a control by the Spaniards in Manila by 1886 to 1890. We have also included changes as per suggestions of Sir Reginald. We included the study of Mr. Francis Geologo and considered Sir Abel Malyari as part of the discussion of this study. We have also inquired the Bureau of Corrections or Bureau of Prisons for the additional resources. However, the researchers did not feel safe in providing valid IDs, complete address with home number of address, as the website or the Bureau of Corrections did not acknowledge the Privacy Act. So we were told by our advisor to not go through with providing valid IDs to avoid being red tagged, since by that time red tagging is very prevalent. So we just consulted the National Archives, Newberry Library, and websites from Spanish websites that provided us with the Recopilación de Leyes and the Spanish Penal Code. We have also included the recommendation of Sir Reginald to include footnotes and have consistency with our citation, wherein we decided to use EBID and shortened version instead of offset. Now, to proceed with our abstract, the research abstract shows that the researchers considered the Carcel y Presidio Correccional as a means of social control through the implications of early 19th century socio-economic changes and political conditions. the Spanish colonial view and definition of crimes, and Manila crime data from 1886 to 1890. So data from the 1887 Spanish Penal Code was contextualized to the definition of the crime data in Manila. So the study is limited and will only focus on the early 19th century social milieu. It will not discuss demographic data, crime data, or criminal accounts from other provinces in the Philippines. Since the researchers had difficulty acquiring and accessing Spanish records, moreover, the study focused only on the prison, Carcel y Presidio Correccional, rather than its contemporaries during the second half of the 19th century, like the provincial jails in Cavite and Zamboanga. So for the statement of the problem, wala na po kaming masyadong binago sa statement of the problem. We just align our statement of the problem to the title and conceptual framework as per Attorney Pelleja's recommendation last proposal defense. So despite the difficulty in obtaining primary sources at the time, the research is significant because it solved all the problems stated in this study. Data crimes are useless unless they solve a study's research problems. Therefore, the researchers maximized the use of crime data, limited the study to 1886 to 1890, and the research showed that the number of crimes indeed fluctuated by 1,652.54% from 1840 to 1885, from 295 to 5,170, resulting in 4,875 crimes difference after 45 years. And now for the research conceptual framework, it needed to discuss the early 19th century social milieu and crime defined through Spanish Penal Code of 1887 and the crime data from 1886 to 1890 in Manila. So as you can see in your screen, these variables help the researchers to analyze how such conditions influence the Spaniards' decision to establish the Carcel y Presidio Correccional in the province of Manila. So Foucault's theory, as per Sir Reginald's recommendation, was not pushed through because the researchers have tried using a theory before, but the variables and objectives of the study always become parallel and do not meet to provide a more concise framework. Therefore, we just stick with the conceptual framework, especially that we ensure naman po na it relates or it connects with our title and with our statement of the problem. And now let's proceed naman po with the methodology. So this is a descriptive study that used document analysis to interpret, understand, and build on electronic and physical documents. So primary and secondary sources and internal and external criticisms strengthen this study. So the sources' credibility and reliability and consistency were verified through in-depth analysis, investigated the secondary source author's credibility and integrity. The researchers also used document analysis to extract data from institutions, repositories, libraries, archives, and websites. So historical accounts were analyzed using an intricate method wherein the researchers deduce and interpret the context of each source line from every angle.
Recording in progress.
The researchers deconstructed the sources, corroborated them with other sources, and contextualized them to reveal the social milieu of the Philippines in the early 19th century, how it influenced the establishment of Carcel y Presidio Correccional, and how the Spaniards used it as a means of social control in 1886 to 1890. So in gathering of source material po, the primary sources for the Carcel y Presidio Correccional were obtained from the National Archives and the National Library of the Philippines, while the majority of the secondary sources were obtained from the internet. This study relied on primary sources such as Recopilación de Leyes de las Reinas de las Indias Tomo II and the Spanish Penal Code of 1887. So these sources po were used to provide crime definitions based on the Spanish colonial definitions. So in chapter 3, so for the discussion later, we can see that the secondary source, the crime data we derive from the secondary sources of Crime Society and the State in 19th century Philippines by Greg Bankoff, and the work of Mark Estefan Borsalagman, which is the Property Owners, Workers, and Public Women's Stories and Geographies of Late 19th Century Manila, 1860 to 1896. So the two secondary sources were used to provide data on crime committed by the native Filipinos. Next po, so for the Spanish translation po, the Spanish translation websites were used to translate Spanish documented sources. So the researchers compared Google Translate, DeepL Translate, and Python translations to test consistency and accuracy. So researchers use Google Translate, DeepL Translate, and Python instead of Spanish Dict, DeepL Translate, and Google Translate as what have we mentioned during the proposal defense. So the researchers found that the Python, Google Translate, and DeepL Translate had similar context. Tables and charts were utilized in Chapter 3 for more organized, summarized, and collected presentation of data of crimes.
So for Chapter 2, in discussing Chapter 2, the social milieu of the early 19th century influenced the establishment of Cárcel y Presidio Correccional in Manila. There were events that challenged the governance of the Spaniards in the Philippines to remain in control in the archipelago. Subsequently, the 19th century Philippines remarked on the colonial government's altered initiative to introduce socio-economic elements or components like migration, agricultural commercialization, and private land ownership, which impacted the traditional viability of rural life. And as you can see in the screen, there are two main sub-points that were emphasized in this chapter, namely the socio-economic changes and political conditions. So for socio-economic conditions, it discussed how land became a status symbol and a precious commodity that produced income. Various policies would later result in the limited ownership or appropriate small holdings during the Spanish colonial period and subsequently would affect sources of financial support, primarily through the Pacto de Retroventa or Sanglang Bili, which defined as a legal arrangement which a farmer would put up his small holding as a collateral on the loan but frequently worth many times less than the value of the land. And dahil sa mga various policies with regards sa land concentration, many native Filipinos became tenant farmers or worse, landless laborers, which resulted in moving to metropolitan or urban areas as well as resorting to banditry out of desperation to provide for their needs. And by the early 19th century, Manila became the center of export and import trading, and correspondingly, many inhabitants moved to Manila. And the province of Manila became the site of rapid population growth. Specifically, many migrants from all over Luzon migrated to Manila and found employment sa Intramuros bilang mga servants. And here, they exchanged a life spent outdoors for one confined by a house, which restricted ng mga regulations na naglilimita sa kanilang kalayaan and gayon din prone sa pang-aabuso at pang-aalipusta. So for political conditions, the 19th century witnessed the development of government institutions, particularly the rapid expansion and growth of Spanish colonial bureaucracy in order to establish law and order in the archipelago. It also explained that the Spaniards were compelled or felt the necessity to create political policies to control the escalating social unrest caused by their economic initiatives. Moreover, abuses and political reforms imposed by the Spaniards also became a factor in deteriorating the natives' relationship with their colonial rulers, which led to social unrest or insurgency. In essence, the subtopics discussed under socioeconomic changes and political conditions prove that they were crucial factors in colonial government's motivation in establishing the Cárcel y Presidio Correccional, which fulfilled in answering the statement of the problem number 1.
For discussion on Chapter 3, Chapter 3 is primarily concerned with providing answer to the problem statement number 2. It details the crime committed in the province of Manila between 1886 and 1890, as well as their definition based on Spanish Penal Code of 1887. The researchers have only provided crime definitions that are available in crime data. Also, the researchers used the Recopilación de Leyes de los Reinos de las Indias to define crime, despite the fact that it was published in the 18th century, as the Recopilación de Leyes was one of the most important government laws used as a guide in the Spanish colonies. The Spanish Penal Code is one of the statutes derived from the Recopilación. In addition, the Recopilación has more general law governing the management of the empire's colonies, while the Penal Code is more specific with regards to laws and punishment to be addressed. In Chapter 3 rin po, the information from the work of Dr. Ladman titled Property Owners, Workers, and Public Women, Stories and Geographies of the Late 19th Century Manila, 1860 to 1896, and the work of Bangkok's Crime, State, and Society in the 19th Century Philippines was utilized. The main difference po ng pag-aaral na ito and pag-aaral po ni Bangkok ng Lagman are yung subject na na-covered. In its papers, si Bangkok po ay diniscuss niya yung general state of crime and society in the 19th century Philippines. Similarly, Lagman's study focuses on the public life of women in the late 19th century. With this factor in mind, the researcher will analyze the crime data from 1886 to 1890 presented in both studies. The frequently cited works serve as data to be analyzed in order to comprehend how the Spanish government at the time could have justified the establishment of the Carcel y Presidio Correccional as a means of social control over the archipelago. The crimes committed by native Filipinos based on Spanish penal code include, so makita niyo po sa screens, yung crimes against liberty and security, offenses committed by public employees in the discharge of their offices, crimes against chastity, crimes against public disorder. Next slide po. Kasama po dito yung parricides and falsification, crimes against person, and crimes against property. At next slide po. To justify po yung frequency of crime, naglagay po kami ng table detailing crimes committed in real audienza from 1840 to 1885. Even before Carcel y Presidio Correccional was established, the number of crimes fluctuated as shown in the table presented on your screen, which led the Spaniards to establish the national prison in order to maintain control. Meron pong 200
Recording
cases
stopped.
in the year 1840, then it rose to 3,200 by 1865, and
Recording in progress.
4,034 in the year 1871, and 4,614 in the year 1875, and 4,260 in the year 1880, and 5,170 in the year 1885, which, according to Rial's audience's record, there was a 1,652.54% increase in the number of crimes between 1840 and 1885. To get the percentage change increase, the researchers used the percentage change formula, whereas the final value, which is yung 570 po, minus the initial value, which is 295, divided by po yung initial value, which is yung 295 na po, multiply by 100, and makukuha na po yung percent change, which is yung 1,652.54%. Next slide po. Dumako na po tayo sa geographical distribution of crimes in the province of Manila, year 1886 to 1890. Between 1886 and 1894, the majority of crimes were committed and carried out in the courts of Binondo, Intramuros, Manila, Pateros, Quiapo, Santa Cruz, Tondo, Pasig, Malabon. 100 cases po equals to 34% were reported from Binondo, followed by Manila with 88 cases equals 30%. Quiapo with 39 cases with 13%, Tondo with 38 cases with 13%, and Santa Cruz with 13 cases with 4%, and Intramuros with 11 cases equals to 4%, Pateros and Malabon with 2 cases and equals to 1%, and Pasig with just 1 crime that is equal to 0.3%. Next slide po. The most prevalent crime committed by native Filipinos between 1886 and 1890 was theft, with 75 cases out of 294 cases recorded. This was followed by 30 cases of injuries, 23 cases of prostitution, 20 cases of estafa, 16 cases of robbery and kidnapping, 7 corruption of minor, 6 maltreatment, 4 cases of rape and homicide, 3 cases of illegal detention and disrespect, 2 cases of youth falsification and murder, and 1 cases of the following: abandonment, false accusation, adultery, fake money, encroachment, illegal entry, fake marriage, infidelity, arson, and the case of injuries with grave degree. While yung 71 naman po ay unspecified, totaling with 294 cases. Next slide po. In Binondo po, meron pong 32 cases of theft, 9 cases of estafa and prostitution, 8 cases of kidnapping and injuries, 5 cases of robbery, 4 cases of maltreatment and corruption of minor, 2 cases of disrespect, and 1 cases of rape, illegal detention, falsification, false accusation, counterfeit money, and adultery. With a total of 100 po. Next slide po. Unlike Binondo, yung sa Intramuros po ay meron lamang 11 cases na nabinig. There were 5 injuries, including po yung 1 rape injury, 2 theft cases, and 2 prostitution, and yung dalawa po ay unidentified. Next slide po. From 1889 to 1890, the Manila court heard 88 criminal cases. There were 21 theft cases, 8 injury cases, 7 estafa, 5 robbery, 4 kidnapping, 2 cases of maltreatment, homicide and feud, and 1 case of infidelity, illegal detention, falsification, minor corruption, arson, and prostitution. And yung 31 cases po ay unspecified. Next slide po. From 1880 to 1890, 39 criminal cases were heard in Quiapo. There were 8 theft cases, 5 injuries, 3 robberies, 2 murder, and kidnapping. 1 case of the following: illegal detention, homicide, estafa, encroachment, disrespect, and abandonment. And yung 12 po out of the 35 cases were unspecified. Next slide po. In Santa Cruz naman po, meron pong 2 cases of theft, 2 cases of prostitution and robberies, 1 case of robbery, kidnapping, and homicide, and 4 cases po ay unidentified. Next slide po. Sa Tondo naman po, meron pong 37 cases in total na nabinig. 10 dun po ay yung theft cases, 4 prostitution, 3 estafa, and injury, 2 cases of robbery, rape, and minor corruption, and 1 case of kidnapping, illegal entry, and fake marriage. And yung 8 po ay not specified. Next slide po. In contrast to other locations, Pateros only 1 cases of prostitution and 1 specified, and only 1 crime of prostitution was reported in Malabon as well as in Pasig. By deducing and construing the context of the punishment procedure correctional, the researchers can conclude po and state that those people were incarcerated in carcel a presidio correctional based on the particular degree of crimes they committed that was punishable by presidio correctional, such as crimes involving money, which including the theft, robbery, estafa, and arson and prostitution. And according po sa Article 28 ng Spanish Penal Code of 1887, the duration of presidio correctional and prison correctional sentences ranges from 6 months to 6 years. Moreover po, the carcel a presidio was the only prison in the province of Manila that was capable of catering and sheltering serious criminals.
So as for Chapter 4 naman po, it mainly discusses the definition of social control, the establishment of the Carcel y Presidio Correccional, and how it was used as a means of social control. So for the definition, social control is the study of mechanisms in the pressure patterns through which society maintains social order and unity, wherein control is exercised through individuals or institutions such as the state. The field of social control itself is vast and general, which is why the researchers opted to use the colonial social control that is explored by scholars such as Dr. Calejana in order to ground and limit the study's definition of social control. As such, colonial social control is defined and used in the study as a mechanism pertaining to the colonial government's way to impose control by establishing laws, punishment, and eventually institutions. So this led to the birth of the Carcel y Presidio Correccional on April 10, 1866, which is located on Mayaliga Street in Manila. And it was only established by the 19th century because they faced many societal upheavals ranging from economic and societal changes and political conditions. Moreover, it was evident that whenever the Spanish government faced such difficulties, they tended to act on it depending on what resources were available. And since it was mentioned in Law J of Recopilación de Leyes de los Reinos de las Indias, Tomo 2, Titulo 6, the Spanish Royal Treasury did not have sufficient funds to build a well-established prison. However, the establishment of the Carcel y Presidio Correccional was still pushed forth, which indicates a necessity of a national prison, an institution to control the growing unrest in the latter years of the 19th century, which again puts pressures on the Spanish government and threats to their control on the populace. And they built it in the province of Manila as it was in the center of their government. Thus, they needed to protect it from the absence of peace and order and other external threats. Shown on the screen is a graph that shows the summary of crimes from 1886 to 1890. So not going too much into detail, but rather to highlight From 1886 to 1887, some of the crimes committed by the native Filipinos that were recorded was prostitution. In 1889, there were 140 recorded crimes, including 38 thefts, 15 injuries, 9 robberies, 6 estafa, and 1 case of adultery, arson, and such. However, in 1890, there were 132 cases of crimes recorded, 37 of which were theft. Furthermore, as mentioned in the chapters before, the early 19th century social milieu had shown the reactions of native Filipinos against the economic developments occurring, which caused by the decisions of the Spanish government, such as the opening to foreign trade and introduction of cash crops, while also experiencing political changes in the forms of misunderstandings of the native Filipinos regarding the imposition of the political creed of 1812. So these conditions had led the population movements towards Manila, which had also led to a growth of social unrest and an increase of crimes committed. So criminal incidents thus became prevalent, and based on the dates and criminal occurrences reported, theft was deemed the most common crime in Manila's provinces, with 38 available crime records, again from the year 1889. So it's worth noting that the primary reason for perpetrators to commit terrible crimes includes property or money. Thus, the Spaniards believed that these specific acts to be detrimental, so it necessitated with them taking action against the growing chaos. And worth noting is that despite there being provincial jails already found throughout the archipelago, they were in terrible condition, or they were not fit to hold criminals who committed heinous crimes. Thus, the creation of the carcel was a decision to detain serious crimes committed, as it was more fortified and better suited for the rehabilitation of the criminals. Finally, the establishment of the Carcel y Presidio Correccional was a manifestation of the necessity to maintain control over the native Filipinos, who were continually experiencing an increase of unrest despite the growth and development of the early 19th century. So the data of crimes recorded during the latter parts of the 19th century had provided insights as to how the Spanish government perceived the ensuing chaos. Thus, their means of control and stabilization is through the punishment of incarceration to a fortified prison in the province of Manila, aka the Carcel y Presidio Correccional. Essentially, through the detention in the carcel, the Spanish government can thus rehabilitate the criminal offender, reforming them to become obedient and submissive followers loyal to Spain, thus furthering the aims of the colonial state. But nevertheless, the prison will eventually fail in its purpose, as the revolution will continue to spark and the Americans will come to the Philippines. And in regards to why the researchers did not include the data from other provincial prisons, especially those regarding data pertaining to the reason for the incarceration of an offender to a specific jail. For example, bakit siya ikinulong sa Carcel y Presidio Correccional instead of other provinces? Hindi kami nakapag-provide ng data regarding that, because gathering data itself, it was a challenge for the researchers, since our Spanish language and paleographic skills are limited. So, and both skills were needed in order to utilize the available primary sources. So the researchers have not yet found any provincial records regarding the reasons for the incarceration of a specific offender to a provincial jail, or kaya dun sa Carcel y Presidio Correccional. Moreover, the researchers had limited the study to what was available in terms of sources in order to answer the research problems and accomplish the study of time.
For the conclusion part, the researchers concluded that the social milieu of the early 19th century pressured the Spaniards and was influenced to establish the Carcel y Presidio Correccional, since the inhabitants migrated in the province of Manila for economic opportunities due to the socio-economic changes and political conditions in the archipelago. Thus, the crimes fluctuated from 1840 to 1885 with 1,654.52%. So the researchers argued that the Carcel y Presidio Correccional was built despite of the insufficient funds of the Spaniard, as what have mentioned in the Royal Treasury found in the Recopilación de Leyes de los Reinos de las Indias, Tomo 2, Titulo 6, Law J. It is evident that the Spaniards indeed needed the established prison, as they were pressured to remain in control of Manila, being the center of their colonial government. So the Carcel y Presidio Correccional serve as the place for crimes convicted and punished with Presidio Correccional, as mentioned in the Spanish Code of 1887, which by that time refers only to the Carcel y Presidio Correccional, supported by Bancroft, describing as a presidio in Manila that can accommodate criminals with heinous crimes. Therefore, criminals who committed serious crimes were incarcerated in the Cárcel y Presidio Correccional, thus serving its purpose as a means of social control to ensure that the Spaniards remain in control of the province of Manila despite the growing social conflicts of the time. However, their colonial government did not last as they could not restrain the emergence of the revolution and the growing power of other empires in the latter part of the late 19th century. For their recommendations, since the researchers were attributed to certain limitations encountered while conducting the study, there are some recommendations for future research on the Cárcel y Presidio Correccional. So regarding the primary documents, the researchers recommend to use the primary sources be bought from Newberry Library for their research, and the list of data on crimes in Manila found in the National Archives used in Dr. Marco Lagman's study. So concerning the usage of these written documents, it is recommended that the future researchers on the topic have a background in paleography or collaborate with a paleographer or consult with a Spanish translator to decipher the notes about the establishment of the Cárcel y Presidio Correccional or the Cárcel y Presidio Correccional furthermore, given that most primary documents available were written in an older form of Spanish. It is a challenge to read such sources without a background in the study of paleography. Thank you so much. And here are the references of our research, the primary and secondary sources. Thank you po.
Maraming salamat po sa grupo ni na Sham. Okay po. Ngayon po ay tinatawagan na po natin ng mga panel members. Kung di po ako nagkakamali, dalawa po ito. Sina Attorney Melchor Pelleja at saka si Sir Reginald Reginaldo. So okay lang po ba kung unahin po natin si Attorney Melchor? Attorney Mel.
Hello, magandang hapon.
Magandang hapon po. Opo.
Pasensya na medyo maingay, nasa labas kasi ako.
Opo.
Okay. So una sa lahat, pinabati ko yung grupo sa napakagandang papel. Ito yung mga komento ko. Wait lang. Meron akong ginawang mga komento. Una, sa abstract, medyo mahaba. Baka kaya niya pang ilimit ng 150 to 250 words. Pangalawa, wait lang kasi nasa pinicturean ko, hanapin ko lang sa... Pangalawang comment ko, dun sa question number 2, baka pwedeng tanggalin natin yung word na moreover. O kaya naman, kung hindi natin tatanggalin, baka pwede nating palitan na in relation thereto or in this relation. O bagala, either walang moreover o kaya in this relation, what were the recorded crimes committed, etc. Parang hindi lang applicable sa statement of the problem yung salitang moreover. Pangatlo, since yung study was already done, di ba tapos na, I think dapat nyo na rin palitan yung verb tenses to past tense rather than in future tense. Kasi dun sa ilang bahagi ng papel, nakita ko na parang we will study or we will focus on since tapos na yung study. I think palitan nyo na rin yung verb tenses. Tapos wait lang. Tanong ko lang, ano yung kapag since ginamit nyo yung salitang Manila, ano yung mga lugar na tinutukoy nito? Kasi hindi ko nakita sa definition of terms. So I suggest sana i-define nyo yung Manila. Or ilagay niyo yung meaning ng Manila sa definition of terms. para guided yung readers kung ano ba yung coverage ano yung mga areas in Manila na tinutukoy nyo dun sa table or dun sa study in Gen. Wait lang ha, masyadong itingin. Pasensya na, Sir Jasmine. Okay, may additional comments pa ako. Wait lang ha. Okay, ano ba sabi? Gusto ko lang ding itanong sa mga sources na nakuha nyo, in-identify pa kung yung mga perpetrators ay natives or other nationals. Kasi baka yung sa data na tinutukoy nyo ay tinutukoy din pala yung mga Chinese or Spaniards. Baka lang pwedeng magawa niyong linawin kung sa mga documents ba talaga ay Filipinos or yung natives, yung mga Indios kasama na, yung tinutukoy dun sa mga datos. Kasi baka kasama di ba yung mga crimes na committed, sino ba yung mga perpetrators nito? Ganun, isasayin ko na lang muna yung mga comments ko, saka kung meron kayong sagot dun sa tanong, pwede nyo rin balikan, ma'am. Okay. Yung sunod ko na, I think, tanong din to, in what manner yung social, economic, and political conditions affects the establishment of correctional. Sumunod, ano yung data na nakuha nyo para isupport na yung establishment ng correctional is indeed the solution dun sa mga conditions at that time? Another question, meron bang increase dun sa reported infractions before the establishment of correctional? Kumbaga, aside from sa discussion nyo on the socio-economic changes and political conditions, prior to 1886, meron bang increase sa reported infractions or